Agent Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean. We have Spigs18 or Anthony. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't, be sure to follow and subscribe on Twitch and YouTube. It really helps our channel out if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate it. And Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Well, once again, you know, the man who needs no introduction is hanging out with us. I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to go all over the top and talk about all the things he's done, but just remember, Monte has been there, you know, as long as gaming has been around, just about, you know, kind of like me, you know, we're like old dogs in the game, and, you know, but he's still creating, still bringing us wonderful, wonderful stuff. But just a little background, you know, of course, he had Mal Havoc Press, which was his own imprint that he created. Tallest at the time came through that trademark, if I remember correctly. And then there was his time at ICE, which was Iron Crown Entertainment. He was at TSR for a while. It was, of course, Wizards of the Coast. He worked on the beginning of 5th edition when it was D&D Next, you know. But again, as Anthony always says, it's the illest pen game in the industry. None other than Monte Cook. Monte, say hello to everybody for us tonight.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Great.
Hey, man.
And real quick, hold on, Anthony. Well, I have one other thing. I'm sorry, everybody. One last thing. We're in the last 22 hours or so of the Planebreaker Kickstarter. If you have not backed it, please do. You won't believe the amount of stuff that comes in this particular Kickstarter. It's going to be phenomenal. It's both for 5e and Cypher. You have the ability to get either or both. So, you know, of course, the links are down below. You know, go check it out. These are the last 22 hours, 8 o'clock tomorrow Eastern time. So that's like 5 o'clock Pacific time.
Right.
That it ends. So people, please, you know, take advantage of it. But Monty's going to, you know, we're going to get into the fun and games and talk about everything that's going on over at MCG. Anthony, take it away. Sorry.
And we're only 9,000 away from the next stretch goal. So come on, guys, let's make that happen. You know, I want as many, I'm just selfish and greedy. I want as many stretch goals as we possibly could get. So we're about $9,000 away. So hopefully let's make that happen before this interview is over.
Nice.
That would be awesome.
So Monty, welcome back to the CU. You know, it's always great to have you on the chat with us.
I'm always happy to come here. It's always fun.
Yeah. You know, we'll like what Dean had just mentioned, you know, we'll start off our conversation with, you know, the elephant in the room, you know, the Path of the Planebreaker. You know, it's the newest Kickstarter. Like we said, there's only 21 hours to go. It's for Cypher System and 5e. You know, it's hitting the home stretch. It's looking phenomenal. You have hitting all those stretch goals. It's still growing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the Planebreaker is and a little bit about the setting, if you can?
Sure. So, I mean, first and foremost, Path of the Planebreaker is a book that is going to offer you all kinds of new planes. As you guys said already, you can choose whether you want it to be 5e or Cypher System. We're getting pretty good at dividing the stuff into those two things. We've, you know, hammered it out with a few different things now, Tallest being a big one. And so, it's going to come in both games. And the sort of the story, the framing story, if you will, is the Planebreaker itself, which is this ancient moon-like object which is hurtling through the planes, and it's just literally like smashing through all the planes, and then it's creating sort of this metaphysical path that then people can use to more easily travel between these planes that the Planebreaker has visited. And the Planebreaker itself, so the plane, you know, in your campaign, the Planebreaker itself can be used, you know, just sort of as the means to get from place to place. But, you know, following along in its wake, I guess you'd say, or the plane, there's a city that's actually on the Planebreaker, and you can go there, Timeborn, the name of the city, and you know, there's all kinds of interesting, very unique things going on there. It's a little hard to reach, but if you can get there, you it's a unique destination in its own right, as well as being, you can hitch a ride and go to the next plane, I guess, if you want. So it's it's like, we've got all these different planes that people are kind of used to from the idea of D&D and all the different planes, or really any fantasy sort of milieu, traveling from there could be some kind of hellish dimension, there could be some parallel world with maybe technology, right? It could be anything that you can travel to these different universes. And that's path of the Planebreaker, and then of course coming with it is there's going to be a bestiary, and there's going to be a player's guide, or rather now it's a options guide. So it's going to have all kinds of new options, again, for whichever system you're using, right? So for 5e, it's new subclasses and new species and whatnot, and for Cypher, it'll be new foci and new descriptors and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be a lot going on.
When we had Sean on, we talked about how everyone was wondering if you're going to break out your Numenera books and they'll be be able to utilize it. You absolutely can. And Worlds Numberless and Strange looks like it's the perfect marriage for this setting as well.
For sure, right? This dovetails with the Strange really well, with all kinds of different dimensions, recursions, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, that there'll be a good mix.
And I will say, before I hop into the next question, you mentioned briefly Timeborn. I believe that's the city we almost made it to in our demo.
No, we actually made it.
Well, we didn't get inside. We didn't actually do anything. Steps. Yeah, we got there, and I'm very excited to see what the city looks like actually. With when we ended there, I was like, wait, we're not actually gonna explore it just a little bit, not even just one building, but yeah, it's a very, very exciting setting. I'm super excited. But yeah, now that we talked about, you even mentioned that there's bestiary, there's all these other stuff coming in with the book. But yeah, there's a lot of new worlds to explore, magic items, species, new feats, just to name a few things. Can you talk about how the workload is distributed amongst the design team, both for 5e and Cypher? Is it separate at all, or does one person work on both versions? I'll let you.
Well, so Bruce is already writing and designing. I'm going to come in to that stage a little bit later, and so is Sean. And Bruce is going to be doing he's the main designer. He's the lead designer on this. But as the creative director, I kind of oversee the entire project in its whole, and I will, basically. The role that I have is that I sort of read and approve everything that comes out of MCG. Yet if it's got words on it, I'm looking at it as it leaves us. And so that'll be the biggest part of my role. But I'm going to contribute. I'm going to be working on some planes. And I think Bruce is probably going to handle most of the subclasses and whatnot. I'll be really honest with you. I'm not exactly sure how we will divide up the different game systems yet. I can tell you that on Tullus, basically we divided it by designer. So one person, and I think that was Sean, did most of the 5e conversion stuff, and then one person did most of the Cypher conversion stuff. And then we all work together to create the new material. But we will probably, like right now, I know that Sean is working on doing Cypher and 5e conversions for some of the follow-up Talos products, Bane Warrens, Night of Dissolution. He just finished Bane Warrens. And I think as time goes on, I think that Sean is really becoming the go-to 5e systems guy. So I imagine he will probably be sort of the driving force behind that in Planebreaker as well, other than the stuff that Bruce is creating whole cloth.
I mean, from the development side of things, you guys developed for this project in particular, and I probably assume Tolis as well, you developed for 5e first, and then, you know, because I would assume that you guys are more comfortable in Cypher, that it's a lot easier for the conversions for you.
Well, I got to tell you, this is a secret. Don't tell anyone. Cypher's a lot easier than 5e. And so, you know, pulling the stuff all together for Cypher is actually a much smaller task than doing it for 5e. And yeah, and so I think definitely Planebreaker is started as 5e, and then it'll be converted to, and I'm pretty sure that's the way we'll probably do all of it. The bestiary and everything probably start as 5e, just because, you know, Cypher is a little more adaptable. Like, you know, there are certain things that kind of are they are 5e or they aren't 5e, and they fit in or they don't. But Cypher kind of can handle
Pretty
different
much
things.
anything. Yeah. Everyone in chat is saying, you know, amen. That's why we love Cypher.
So we're talking about all this great stuff, and you know, it's no secret, you know, you especially you and Bruce, your experience with Planescape, you know, and your team, you know, working with all this kind of stuff, you know, how much experience or that mindset are you and Bruce bringing to the designing, you know, or how has it influenced Path or Planebreaker, if at all?
Well, I can mostly speak for myself, and I can tell you that Planescape has pretty much influenced everything that I have worked on since then, because it was Planescape that like taught me that you could really go out and do anything with a role-playing game, and you could, you know, kind of push the envelope, you know, tear the envelope apart, really, throw the envelope away, and, you know, just do all kinds of wild stuff. You know, to go backward, to just kind of delve into that a minute, like Planescape is also the product that taught me that like the way that you write something can be as valuable and interesting as what you write. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with Planescape much, but it, you know, it had its own language basically of slang and different terms that it used, and it just was immediately immersive that you got into it, you know. I started at TSR in, I think, 94, like spring of 94, and literally the Friday, like I started on a Monday, and the Friday that of that same week, they dropped off a Planescape box set that was the game that had just been published. And I like spent the whole weekend just diving into that. And, you know, it was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to work on. And I kind of petitioned the powers that be there until I could make that happen.
Nice.
Yeah, the work you did with Planescape was groundbreaking though.
Yeah.
That's, you know, one of my favorite settings of all time, you know, and it brings back so many memories, you know, the 24-hour gaming sessions playing.
Nice.
Listen, like I said, I don't think if anybody's been playing as long as you've touched Planescape, you know, you had to. It was like Anthony said, even like you said, it was life-changing. It opened up your thought process. It opened up your creativity. You know, it was a very special product. And as far as I can see, this is shaping up to be a similar special product. So I do have one other little question to add into this, you know, since we're just talking about it. The path, does the path dissipate over time, or is once it barrels through a universe, is the path always there, or can you find it? You know, can the players find it again?
They can. I think I believe it gets more challenging as time goes on. But yes, that path is kind of there. But I'm not exactly sure what the time frame is of the change, but
Yeah, we had so much fun on the path. The majority of Adventure was on the path.
Right.
I could see whole campaigns just traveling, on the path through these planes. It's interesting and in itself. It was so
Yeah.
You have them on the path and they end up in this dimension for a few sessions, and the path is fading, so they got to get back on the path to get to where they're going. Yeah.
It's like going by train to all your adventuring locations.
Yeah. Except that something could kill you on the train.
Like people carrying a mimic around.
That's awesome.
Not only are you have mentioned earlier, but you're getting 3 books with this Kickstarter: the Bestiary, the Player's Guide, and of course the core book on Path of the Planebreaker. But there is so many other accessories and wonderful items, that can be selected with this. I'm just gonna name a few. I'm looking at the Kickstarter page now. You have 2 different sets of miniatures. You can get the STL files or the miniatures themselves. You have a GM screen, 2 different sets of dice, right? Then you have path tokens, you have a dice tray, a resource deck. There's so much stuff that you could get. What are you most excited to see in the hands of fans after this Kickstarter? Have you got to see any of the accessories firsthand?
Not firsthand. But I've seen, we have some videos up that Charles Ryan, and they show off like the dice and the notebook and everything and the miniatures. And, I used to be just a huge miniatures addict. I had a real problem. And I did a lot of painting and I did a lot with them. I kind of have fallen away from that a little bit, but man, these miniatures are kind of making me want to come back. Plus, I don't know if you guys saw, but we're through another company whose name I can't think of right now, and I apologize. We're doing a bunch of Numenera.
Draco Studios.
Yeah,
there
Draco
we go.
Studios.
Yeah, and those look amazing too. I can't wait to get my hands on. I don't have a 3D printer, but my friend Bear Whiter does. Ooh, nice, very nice.
We actually had him on last week.
Okay, cool. I apologize for not remembering.
Reveries of the Ninth World is their campaign.
I got the first one, and I have this, and I backed the second one, and I've been printing these up slowly. And I think for Christmas, I'm gonna try to get myself my own personal 3D printer, because those things, I love them.
Do you have a favorite mini, Monty? That not necessarily from this, just from having minis as a whole from the hobby.
Oh, as a whole? I probably do, but they probably have. It's probably because there's things associated with them. Like somebody's like. This is going back, but Bruce Cordell played in the original Talus campaign, or in one of them. There were 3, but he played a Minotaur wizard, and so I took. I want to say it was a Reaper Minotaur miniature. But anyway, I took and made like this little cloak for it out of cloth, and then I covered it with this stuff that hardened it, and then painted it all up, and then gave him a little staff. And so he was totally kit bash, but I really liked how it came out. That's probably one of my favorite miniatures.
I don't want to go off on a tangent, but Sean told us the story that when you worked at TSR, that you used to build these little superhero campaigns with like dolls and miniatures, and that they would be so excited to show up to see how, like you would change like these little action scenes.
He's fired.
Oh,
Yes, we did. Yes,
He
we
did
did.
say he got so excited every time there was like a new setup.
Yeah, it was all weird humor though. It wasn't like we used a lot of action figures, but nobody really was who they really were. It was all just.
That's the fun of it, Monty. Come on, listen. You love superheroes. I mean, your intro and Claim the Sky alone, just was portents for that. And the Boundless campaign, so cool.
Man,
Cool. I'm glad.
I remember growing up painting my sister's Ken doll red so he could be the Human Torch.
Nice.
I mean, talking about doing stuff like that, I changed Superman to like accurate because I figured if you're going to be a living solar battery, why not be a real living solar battery?
That's awesome.
So I'm always playing around with this stuff too. I can't help it. I'm a big kid.
We used to do a lot of weird stuff at TSR because we all had cubicles, and so Ray Valise, who still does a lot of editing for us at MCG, but he worked at TSR with us, and we had adjoining cubes, and I had figured out exactly. I had these rubber bands, and I had rigged it up so that I could shoot like these little rubber like dinosaurs, and I got it so that I could be on my side of the cube wall and let him go, and I would know the trajectory so that I could hit him while he was working.
Dinosaur attack.
But now that we're talking a little bit, you mentioned a couple times to go back a little bit. You recently started writing an excellent blog about game design. If you could go back in time and give yourself younger Monty some advice about game designs or the industry, what would that be?
Oh man. I'd probably one of the things I'd want to do is I'd probably want to go back and talk about how to think more about how a player and a GM interfaces with the stuff that you're creating, because back then, and I'm talking about like the late 80s, early 90s, because I'm really old, people were just kind of putting out products, and really, like, if you go back to that period, like, it didn't matter if it was a Shadowrun book or a Call of Cthulhu book or a D&D book. They all kind of looked the same. They presented this, the adventures were all just sort of numbered maps with a key. And I mean, everybody was kind of just doing the same thing. And, now we've got all kinds of great innovation and whatnot. And I wish that I could have kind of lit that fire under me earlier, right? To just kind of say, don't worry about what's been done in the past about, you're not Gary Gygax. You're not going to ever write like Gary Gygax. So, don't just think about how it's always been done. Think about what's really necessary and what's needed. Because that's what I spend almost all my time doing now is thinking about, how is someone going to actually use this new mechanic? How is someone going to interface with this? How what's it going to be like at the table? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be fun? Is it going to take up too much time, because there's extra roles involved or whatever, right? All those kinds of just nitty gritty, think about how it actually ends up at the table. Like we had, this is weird, but when we're working on 3rd edition, we did a thing where we calculated the amount of time that it takes to roll a die, add a number to that die, and then compare that number to another number, because that's what mostly you're doing in D&D, right? And it's like, I don't remember, but it's like 1.3 seconds or something. It's really fast, right? So you think, oh, no big deal, right? But then when you start figuring out how many times you do that over the course of a 4-hour game session, suddenly, you add up all those seconds and it's huge chunks of time, right? And so we would just like go through and like, if we just made it so that you didn't have to roll for this action or whatever, you're going to save, and sometimes it was like, 4 or 5 minutes out of a whole session, right? Where you could do other things. If we just got rid of this one funky little mechanic that we had put in there, right? Or like, a big one to use an actual concrete example was initiative. every time when you started a battle, you rolled an initiative, but you rolled it just once, right? And then you kept that same initiative order through the whole battle. If you guys remember second edition D&D, you didn't do that. You rolled initiative every turn. Time. And that alone probably saves like about 15 minutes out of your average 4 to 6 hour session, right? And that stuff just adds up.
Hearing you talk about the good old days, did you have a mentor, or who inspired the young Monte Cook game designer? Who did you look up to in the industry when you first started?
When I first started, I had a couple of mentors. Coleman Charlton was the Rollmaster editor at Iron Crown Enterprises. That's where I got my first job, and he was a big help. I mean, not the least of which was just taking a chance on this guy who was fresh out of college and didn't have hardly any experience or anything. So I always want to credit him. Also at Iron Crown Enterprises, there was a guy named Terry Amthor who sadly just passed away within the last couple of months. But he wrote one of my favorite adventures of all time, if not my favorite adventure of all time, which was for Middle Earth role playing. It's called Court of Ardor. And I promise you, if you flip through the Court of Ardor, you will just come upon all these things. If you flip through the book and the stuff that I've worked on, you'll just see, oh, that must be where Monte got the idea for the Crater Ridge Mines and Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil, right? Oh, this must be right. I mean, it's just so influential on me.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Oh, another big help to me was a guy. He's no longer in the industry. In fact, he's in politics now. But his name was Rob Bell, and he was the main editor for Champions. And at the time, Champions was also published by Iron Crown. And so I worked on Champions a lot too. And Rob was very helpful in getting me started and teaching and showing me the ropes.
That's pretty awesome to hear all of that kind of stuff, and it's, no secret that, you're probably the inspiration for a lot of people today, out here doing this. And when you start looking at those things, those capacities, and to hear you talk about superheroes, and to know that you were there, so plugged in, it's a really cool aspect too, because, that's my favorite genre, of course, everybody knows that. But, we had Charles on a few weeks ago, and we spoke about how you're involved in some capacity, no matter what, with every project that goes on at MCG. And, that can be a lot. But can you tell us, kind of how you manage it, to keep that on track and keep it so efficient? And if you want to tell us about anything you might be working on now.
Well, so we have a new managing editor and project manager, and she is fantastic. She helps me so much in that, like I have, I've got my own projects to work on, but then I've got all every time something comes in, probably in a couple of different stages, I have to go through it and review it and kind of give it the thumbs up, or say, if it's an early stage, like right after a designer designs something, it goes to me, and I will give feedback. And usually my feedback is pretty high level. Like I'm not looking to see, this, NPC's health should be 3 more, or what, I'm not a micromanager like that, but I will look at a big picture, hopefully taking into account a lot of the things that I was just talking about, right? About how things get used at the table and what appeals to people and what's fun. And then it goes off and goes to editing, and sometimes one of the other designers, usually Sean, will look at it and do development, and he will look at some of the smaller aspects of it, and by like the specific aspects of it, like if the NPC has enough health or whatever, and then it goes to editing, and then layout with Bear Whiter, and then it will come back to me again once it's in layout form, and I will go over it all and, you know, just kind of look to make sure that we're happy with all the art and all the maps and how that all integrates and everything. And then there's sometimes there's a few more things, and then like literally as it's on its way out the door to the printer, and you know, I mean metaphorically out the door because it's all electronic, but I will often take one last look at things. It depends on the thing, but so it's anywhere from 2 to 3 different times. I kind of am going over every single product, and yeah, that is a lot of work. And you know, so to get back to managing editor Terry, she will help me so much in that she can, you know, just kind of keep the chaos under control and just say, okay, we need you to do this on Thursday. Okay, we need you to have this done by Friday. And by that, I can then take, you know, I know that if Terry's not telling me I've got to do this thing, then I've got that time to work on whatever project I'm working on. I can't really talk about what I'm working on now, but I can tell you that I finished Stealing Stories for the Devil, finished that up, and all the stuff that goes along with it, Who the Devil Are You, and all of that stuff. And I finished, I don't know if you guys even remember, or if anyone remembers, but the last thing that we needed to deliver for the Liminal Shores Kickstarter for Numenera was a novella, and I just finished that up. So all of that stuff's on my plate. So I'm moving into something brand new that will get kickstarted probably in next year, in 2022, come out in 2023. And it sounds like science fiction to be talking about dates like 2022 and 2023. But yeah, so that's the main focus, and yeah, that's.
I'm excited.
It's messy, but everything gets done.
It's funny. Before I even go to my next, I just had a couple of points. I saw that epiphany in Monte's eyes. Like, damn, I need a raise. That is a lot of work. He's like, I'm reading everything. Yeah. While you go through it, doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you sit there and explain it to someone else, you know, your workload is a lot, you know, because you guys produce a lot of content. There's a lot of books that come out through MCG and products that come out through MCG. So if your eyes and hands are touching every single one of those products, that is a tremendous amount of workload. But the other point I wanted to ask is, you know, you have Shauna, Bruce, and Sean, who are all phenomenal game designers in their own right. I would assume that, do you ever read some of their stuff and get blown away by like, oh man, this is super creative. Like, you know, having to go through everything.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I wouldn't I wouldn't want them to be part of the team if they weren't blowing me away, right? I you know, was just talking to Shauna about the game that she's working on from the Devil Kickstarter, and she's working on the Devil's Dandy Dogs game, and you know, it's really cool and creative and different, and yeah, I'm really excited about it. And the stuff that Bruce has already done for Planebreaker is really cool, and you know, I'm already a big fan of the Shadow Stitch Rogue. That kind of blew me away. Yeah, it's all good stuff.
You know, you talking about that. Speaking of Shauna, if she's an earshot or you passed the message, we know First Responders will be out soon, so she's going to be due on the show. You know, we need her on to talk about.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
You know, because well, we're going to talk about that some more in a minute. That whole situation, Claim the Sky, and First Responders in the Origin are completely phenomenal because they're all their own things, but they connect so beautifully. You guys did such a great job. You would think the same person wrote everything, you know, it's not, and it's really so cool that you guys were able to connect it on such a visceral level.
I'm glad.
I'm
Thank you.
excited about it.
You sort of started answering this question a little bit in the last question, but you know, you guys grown a little bit since the beginning, but you're still, you know, comparatively a pretty small team compared to other companies that produce the same amount of products your guys do on a yearly basis. So can you break down maybe what's the process for a company from start to finish for a project, you know, between Charles, you, Shauna?
So, right. So all of our stuff is written and designed by our full-time design staff. And so the designers will start working on it. Of course, the way we do a business, like there's already probably been a Kickstarter at this point, right? And so the Kickstarter kind of nails down a lot of the parameters of the book, right? Like sometimes the final page count is determined by stretch goals and that kind of stuff. And so the designer, you know, kind of has all that information that's already been figured out. And the designer works on it. We have weekly design meetings. Our team does that, where we get together and we all talk about what we're working on that week. And you know, often that leads to like discussions about, you know, I don't know how to do this part, you know, and then somebody will give you some advice or hey, or an idea or whatever. We'll brainstorm a little bit, and you know, it's collaborative in that way. Even if you're working on the project alone, there's a lot of feedback from the team. But so like I said, yeah, then it. As the creative director, I do a review of it. I usually spend, depending if it's a good sized product, like for example, I just went through the Origin not very long ago, and I probably spent a couple of days looking at the Origin and whatnot, going over all of that. And that goes back to Bruce, who was the sole designer on that one. And then Sean is also doing some development work on it, sort of the smaller scale stuff. And then it goes off to an editor. And all of our editors are freelance. They're all, we have a managing editor who sort of, you know, kind of keeps all that stuff together. She's also the project manager. But the actual editing is done out of house, and then comes in from editing, and then it goes to Bear. And Bear, the designers already probably put together a list of art suggestions that they would like, or if there's going to be maps, they drew some kind of sketch. My maps are always very sketchy. And that all goes to Bear. Bear talks to the artists. Again, those are all out of house people. And they're really all over the world. It's kind of interesting and exciting. You know, Bears, you know, will find a new artist, and we'll say, and you know, she's from, you know, Lithuania or whatever. And then Bear pulls all that together, makes a beautiful thing. And then I look at it again, and then it also goes back to the editor who looks at it. And then there's a separate proofer who looks at it all. Meanwhile, Terry Lasharko is kind of managing all of these pieces. And then at some point we have a big discussion that involves the whole company, where we talk about the project as a whole, and like Charles takes a lot of notes because he handles the marketing, and you know, he like looks for all the salient points and everything. I mean, that isn't the first time they've heard of it, obviously, because we had a Kickstarter that kickstarted the product. But and then once it's proofed and the final layout is finished, I might take one more look at it, and then it goes off to the printer, and Charles and Latia and Jennifer and Tammy will start looking at it from the point of view of marketing, and we'll, you know, figure out like if there's any kind of special promotions or articles or anything that we should be writing to support it. And then when it comes back from the printer, a lot of it goes to our warehouse in Atlanta, run by PSI, but we have a warehouse in Kansas as well that Tammy manages and has a team of people there who are doing all the Kickstarter fulfillment as well as any of the direct orders and filling, doing all of that stuff.
He's also writing those little hearts on your box that you get when you get your Kickstarter.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, the more you say, "Oh, we love this stuff," and like the more you tell, you know, the people in the warehouse how much you like that, then the more they do it, and pretty soon it's just going to be giant pieces of art on every box. But and then sort of on top of all of this. Charles and Tammy and I are, we call it the leadership team, and we're meeting every week to talk about, you know, the various ins and outs of the company. And like, you know, like right now, for example, we have the Kickstarter going on. We have the Humble Bundle for Numenera going on, and we have Your Best Game Ever in the bundle of bundle of holding. So Humble Bundle and Bundle of Holding. And so we're the ones kind of handling all of that and approving that stuff. And, you know, like if we're going to do a sale, like we are for Black Friday this year.
Just came up in chat.
Somebody just asked that question.
You know, that's where we're the people who kind of deal with all of that. And so, yeah, it's a lot.
You know, I mean, we'll let Al ask this question, but it's just kind of funny you say that, Monty, because you just laid out a laundry list, you know, of things that you do, but you guys all seem just so like it's just another day at the office. You just take it in stride. And what I think for me, what's so impressive about it is you make those of us who are trying to break in and try to do this kind of stuff, you show us it is possible, it's attainable, and you guys do such great work. You know, it's inspirational. So, you know, you don't want to put out a half-assed product, you know, because you guys are leading the way. So keep up the great work, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you.
I also think it's worth mentioning that not only is all this going on from start to finish, it's going on in the middle of a global pandemic, which absolutely had to change at least some of your business practices. And also going to conventions and doing everything else that a striving company has to do to, make sales.
It affected conventions a lot. And for a while there, our printer shut down, like at the height of stuff going on in 2020. The warehouse has been, really affected because that's a lot of people in close contact. But most of us are, we're working from home anyway. So in some ways we had kind of an advantage versus a lot of the world because we were already, doing our meetings via Zoom and all of that kind of stuff and didn't really have to slow down. But yeah, it definitely affected us. But hopefully now the worst of that is over, fingers crossed, and, we'll be back to normal
Just off the side project, is it global? Oh, you're going to have a global pandemic scenario of first responders?
There is
Shauna, maybe you can answer.
Oh boy, I was like, that caught me off guard. But yeah, moving on to the next question here. You've always been known to try new things in game design, like with Invisible Sun, Stealing Stories for the Devil. And Sean told us when he was on here that you actually did some game design for HeroClix. Would you ever consider designing some sort of collectible game like HeroClix, a game again in the future for Monte Cook Games?
In theory, but like it's a market that I haven't been paying a lot of attention to for quite some time. I would have to look at it and see what that looks like from a business point of view, mostly. But it is definitely, a fun thing. Like HeroClix was a real sweet spot for me because I love miniatures and I love superheroes, and anytime you get to figure out the stats for Spider-Man and the Hulk and whatnot, that's a good job. And I have a lot of funny stories about dealing with Marvel and DC, and because when I designed the 2 core sets for HeroClix, and one was Marvel and one was DC, and dealing with the 2 companies was just night and day. Very, very different. But
As a comic book fan, are you a Marvel or DC guy? But you don't have to answer who's more difficult. But as a comic book fan, do you prefer Marvel or DC?
Well, this is not a reflection on who is more easy to work with. And the weird thing is that like it would also fluctuate because there's a lot of turnover at those companies, and I think throughout the life of HeroClix, we had a couple of different people that we would talk to there for their licensing. But I was always a Marvel guy, and I kind of came to DC a lot later, and I still like. It's funny, my favorite, like, if you were going to think about my absolute favorite, this is the best comic book that has ever been written. They're almost all DC, but as a whole, I'm a Marvel fan.
Yeah, my brother used to always say you could tell a lot by a person by whether they were a Marvel or DC fan. I never knew what he meant by that, but he just told a comic book story. He will always say that.
We'll have a conversation about it one day, Anthony. I'll tell you about it.
I like them both, so but
no, they both have their strengths, but like and honestly, what Monte said about, like, if you talk about the greatest books, the most critically acclaimed, they do come from DC, but Marvel has another. Their method of storytelling and their characterizations are what make them a great thing, So, but that's another video. So with that being said, can you tell us anything about any of the other projects you're working on, or something from previous Kickstarters that are now being fulfilled, like Claim the Sky, which is reaching the backers now, and just kind of how are things progressing with, like, those projects that you may not be able to tell us about?
Well, I feel like I'm this whole show just singing the praises of Terry, our managing editor, but she has really made a big difference in just sort of managing and keeping track of everything. And she loves spreadsheets and all that stuff that I don't. So she's very well organized, and I'm not. And so things are going pretty well. We had a little bit of a slowdown for a while because of stuff that was, sort of pandemic and COVID related. There have been a few different instances, but just like a basic one is just when your printer, when the people aren't going to work at your printer, you're not making products, right? I mean, that's just really straightforward. So 2020 and 2021 have been some challenges. We had the tallest GM screen and the NPC deck, and most of the stuff that we print is printed here in North America, but we had those printed in China, and that took 3 months longer to get here than we were originally expecting, and so that kind of stuff comes up. But overall, things are going really, really well. I've mentioned the Origin before. The Origin is going to be really cool. I'm excited about that one. Shauna's working on Devil's Dandy Dogs, which is going to be really different than anything that we've done before. Kind of more of a indie story game kind of thing than what we've done before, but it's the game that you'll be able to sit down and play with your non-gamer fans, and there won't be a lot of complex rules or anything for them to trip over. It's all really, very story-based, straightforward. And yeah, I mean, we're, one of the things that we've been doing, and you've probably noticed, or maybe you've noticed, is that with our individual Kickstarters that we've been doing, we've been, each individual Kickstarter sort of unlocks fewer books and fewer products. Like if you go way back to like the original Numenera Kickstarter, right? Like there's like 12 books or something that came out of that. It was, I don't remember, but it was a lot. And, but now like with something like Heroes of the Cypher system, right? There's Claim the Sky, there's Origin, there's First Responders, there's a couple of sort of ancillary products, a playmat and things like that. But it makes it a lot easier for us that way to like kind of close the lid on a we kind of tend to, our business is so Kickstarter focused. We tend to really think about things in Kickstarter sized chunks, and it is very satisfying to be able to say, okay, absolutely everything that we promised from that Kickstarter is now delivered, and we can move on to the next one. And that's something that we've been getting better and better at kind of getting that done faster and faster.
I don't think it's a secret when it comes to RPGs and Kickstarters. I think your guys are the gold standard, as in you fulfill everything. It's high quality. 95% of it is on time, as promised. And as someone who's backed pretty much every Kickstarter but the first one, I've received every product on time. And, there's something to be said for that, because there's a lot of companies that you might get it, it'll fulfill, but it'll be a year later past promise date. Your guys are, you're like in your groove. You know exactly what you're doing. If you back an MCG Kickstarter, that you're going to receive the product, is going to be high quality, is going to be reasonably on time. And if not, you'll be notified. You'll communicate everything well. Your guys do a great job.
And let's not forget that they are also probably, I've never dealt with a company when there's a problem with a delivery, if the book is damaged or what have you. That's also always taking care of it. It's, no issues. It's done. You guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Before we get away from that, we're talking about the product. One thing I wanted to ask about, I knew it came up. This Kickstarter Path to the Planebreaker has given us a system agnostic GM shield, GM screen. And just out of curiosity, what was the inspiration for that? Because I think it's a great idea anyway, but,
Well, the Talus GM screen is also system agnostic. And so what we're doing is, it obviously it doesn't have the game mechanics and stuff on it, but what it does have is the stuff that relates to the other information that the GM needs. I can speak because we haven't even begun designing or thinking that much about the Planebreaker one yet, but I can talk about the Talus one more clearly, right? It's got all the important NPCs and the important locations, and it's got, it's tied to page numbers in the books, and all this stuff that, like, I don't know. I find that when I use a GM screen, very rarely am I using it to like look up the stats of something or a rule or whatnot. And so the inside of my GM screen just ends up with being a whole bunch of Post-it notes of like, oh, don't forget about this NPC, or, oh, that guy's armor is cursed now, or whatever. And so it's much more that, it's much more sort of focused on the setting and that information. Because, is probably more true of Talus than a Planebreaker, but there's a lot of information there to manage.
Yes.
And so having all that stuff on the screen is really, really useful. And, you know, being able to do that with Planebreaker, and I imagine what we'll do is some kind of like index inside the screen that like talks about the different planes. I imagine there'll be a lot of stuff about Timeborn probably in there, all like the important NPCs and stuff that you're going to want to access a number of times, maybe even like a little map of plane. I don't know.
Nice. Well, no, like I said, I just thought it was kind of cool, you know, because, you know, we go through this, Anthony's anti-screen, and, you know.
Don't blame me, blame Monte, because I used to be pro screen until I became a MCG GM.
No, I'm not really a screen guy anymore. I'm not really a screen guy anymore myself.
I got spoiled with the Mets. Oh, Monte, before we go to our rapid fire questions, do you mind if we take a couple of questions from the chat? Because we wrote down a couple of questions.
Yeah.
You want me to go first, Al, or you want to go first?
I'll start it off. So we do have a couple questions here. They were asked throughout the stream here, and I just copy pasted them so we can ask them at the end here. So yeah, well, let's get to some of them here. So we got the first one here from Electric Chameleon, and they asked, "I'd love to know what the paths look like when they're being walked. Are there literal paths? Do they take different forms? Does the screen just get really wavy like with the Wayne's World wipe effect, and then the players are just wind up elsewhere?" They're just wondering about the path of the Planebreaker.
Well, you know, I wish Bruce was here, because I think that's part of what he's working on, like as we speak. But there, I'm just going to have to give you at this point, as I understand it. As I understand it, they're sort of more metaphysical than that. And less like a real path that you literally walk on. I mean, it's closer to like thinking of it as almost like a series of portals or something.
Dean,
but that could also change.
Yeah. And this is also from Electric Chameleon. He says, it seems there's a lot of built-in connections between Planebreaker setting and other settings from MCG. For example, Premier, the world of Talus, is missing a moon, and the Planebreaker is a moon-like object. Monte mentioned dovetails between recursions and the strange and the planes and the Planebreaker. Was this intentional?
Frankly, no. So the rightly or wrongly, for good or ill, the world of Talus doesn't actually mesh with Planebreaker very well, because the, I don't know, this is kind of spoilery for Talus, but the plane that Talus is in is really hard to leave. And so, I mean, you know, any GM can do whatever they want. Maybe the Planebreaker shows up and changes all of that, and that could be really cool. I kind of like that idea, actually, but there isn't a lot of planar travel out of that world, as it's written. And the crossover, like originally Planebreaker was designed with 5e in mind, and so it wasn't designed. I should say conceived of. It wasn't conceived of as having a lot of connection with things like the Strange or Worlds Numberless and Strange, but it was, you know, frankly, you know, as soon as we started talking to about Planebreaker to people, including on your Discord, right? People started saying, well, but what about Cypher? What about Cypher rules? And you know, it made sense to us to, you know, be like, well, you know, if people want it, that's what we should do. And so we created the Cypher version. I shouldn't say created, conceived of the Cypher version after the 5e version. So it only then did it become like, oh yeah, and look at how cool this would fit together with the Strange. And so that's kind of serendipitous, really.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's fun. You put it nicely when you was like, oh, people were talking about it. No, they had their pitchforks out. There was torches being lit heading up to the castle.
Hey, but the lesson to take away is, right, if you want to have an effect on MCG products, go to the Cypher Unlimited Discord and say some, give your opinions. Do it nicely.
Cypher Unlimited Discord, Screw Tape, who's a very active member on the Cypher Unlimited Discord. Hey, Screw. MCG has made a lot of products with alternate realities, Planebreaker, The Strange, even Cypher itself helps people move characters from setting to setting. Is that something you feel is missing from other tabletop RPGs, or is this just a coincidence?
Well, it's not a coincidence. I think it speaks a lot to the stuff that we as designers like to do, and as gamers like to play and create. And I'll be honest, right? A lot of that goes back to the Planescape influence that we were talking about at the top of the show. I myself really like that idea of different levels of existence and dimensions and all those kinds of things. But, I kind of have always been that way. I mean, I can remember when Queen of the Demon Pits came out, right? And that was the first official D&D module that had planar travel in it. And I loved it. I don't know, that idea has just always really appealed.
What makes it nice too, I don't think a lot of people, I think people sometimes miss that thing, but that's one of the nice things about Cypher in of itself, because the system is simple and elegant. It has its layers and nuances, but all your worlds are easily adapted. If I want to run, like Sean was telling us how he brought, his girlfriend and his gaming group, he just brought their Numenera characters into Talus. They didn't even have to remake characters, because guess what? Boom, you were playing Numenera, now you're going to be in Talus.
And you can really, in many ways, you can actually thank the Strange for that, because we had Numenera, and then we sat down and started working on the Strange, and very, very early on, we realized, we've got to start figuring out a way for like normal people in modern day Earth to be portrayed in the Cypher system as characters. And then, while we're at it, we've got, this, Arden, this fantasy world, and we got this sci-fi world, and that was when kind of it all gelled, and when we realized we've got to be able to integrate all of these things, and it made it a lot easier to write the Cypher system rulebook, because we'd done a lot of that work, right? We'd come up with sort of the normal people foci and things like that. So yeah, I mean, because in the beginning, right, there was just Numenera, and it was just crazy weird science fantasy.
You gonna ask the next question?
Yeah, I got the next one. I had a comment to make on what he just said, and you just broke me out of it. But either way, I'll just move on to the next question. Literally, I had a comment to make, and then your words distracted me, and they were just gone. Either way,
that was a minor race cipher.
we have another question from Electric Chameleon, and it's a pretty easy one. They said Monte's Champions Universe campaign guide was one of my favorite resources for champions. Did you get to work with Aaron Alston?
I did not work with Aaron on that particular product, but I did get to work with Aaron in some other ways, and he was a great guy. Also, another game designer who's no longer with us, hasn't been for a long time, but he was fantastic. He was another of those guys that really focused on like thinking about how things were going to get used at the table. and really, was one of the first people that I ever saw, who talked about like the different kinds of gamers, right? The guy who really likes the combat, guy who really likes puzzles, that kind of thing. And, and then making sure that you presented stuff for everyone. And yeah, Aaron was great.
Nice.
Cool.
And
So-
thanks for the compliment about Champions Universe. I loved working on that.
That's a great book. It's over there. But no, so Josh from Angel Citadel, he asked, when can we expect the next installment of the Invisible Sun stuff?
I don't know the answer to that. I would love to do more. You can see beautiful Jason Engel Invisible Sun paintings there behind me. Invisible Sun means a lot to me. It's that and Numenera are the games that I personally keep coming back to as a gamer and as a GM. And I just finished a Numenera thing. I'm starting a new Invisible Sun thing. And so there's plenty of ways we can go. But there are challenges with Invisible Sun that aren't with anything else. One of them is that you need this huge giant box to play, and those are all sold out. And so it's hard to justify putting together like new supplements and whatnot for a game where you can't even buy the game anymore. So the first problem we would have to solve is we'd have to figure out a new way, I think, to present that material that didn't end up being such an expensive big box. As cool, as much as I am in love with, as much as a human can be in love with an inanimate object, I am in love with that box. And, but I also recognize that, it's very expensive, and it puts it out of the reach of some people, and that's not cool. So I got it. The gears are churning, but I don't know the answer to the actual question.
Well, Monty, you said that. You said that, like, Anthony says he's intimidated by it because he doesn't want to run it wrong. Yeah. I'll be honest.
You know why? Because it's such a beautiful. Like, I feel like when I open up my cube, I feel like I'm like looking at a piece of art, like a Salvador, like I have a Salvador Dali painting in my hands. So it's that pretty, what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. I get it, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't get it on the first Kickstarter. I wanted it. I loved it. I loved the concept. But my thing was, who am I going to play with? I don't know enough people who are going to, I felt like I didn't know I was going to know people who were going to appreciate it.
Right.
And then, the second Kickstarter, I'm like, I got to do it. I got to get it, and I have it, and I'm not regretting any moment of it. And I've actually got to play a few times. I've got to be a player, got to GM a little bit. And I do, I need to mainline a campaign,
But yeah, so the next question we have here is from our buddy Brilliant Loser, or Jesus. Yeah, he's an awesome dude, great guy. He asks, any advice for someone who's about to launch their first Kickstarter?
Wow. Well, so Shauna and I wrote a book. It's called Kicking It, still out there. It's a little old, but you can get it like at drive-through. And it has a lot of advice in there, and most of it is still really quite pertinent. But I guess if I was going to just give one piece of advice to someone, it would be to really understand all the work and all the money that are going to be needed to produce that product. When I see new Kickstarters, and we were talking about this earlier, where, sometimes people are really late, sometimes people can't deliver at all. Almost all of that comes from people who underestimated how much work and money and everything was going to be, right? Shipping adds up, you're going to get quotes from the printer, and by the time you actually send it to the printer, it's going to be more expensive, right? And shipping is going to go up at some point during. I mean, like overestimate, over plan for how much everything is going to cost, and when you figured out all the stuff about how long it's going to take you, just double it, because stuff's going to happen, right? Like your graphic designer is going to have a baby or whatever, right? I mean, something's going to, I mean, I've heard it all. And I know, I mean, these aren't excuses. These are things that really happen. And, life just happens. So that would be the thing that I would say. Don't put yourself in a position where you're suddenly on the hook to deliver something that you can't get done in the time that you have done, and you can't actually, you end up losing money. I mean, some people who put out successful Kickstarters, like big number Kickstarters, ended up actually losing money because they didn't plan well enough and they didn't realize how much it was going to take. They're just throwing stretch goals out there or whatever, and it's come back to bite them. So that's my advice. Know what
That's
you're doing.
great advice.
That is
Dean,
good.
you want to ask the next one, and I'll ask the last one, or vice versa?
Sure. Elo tier 0, I believe it is. As when will we see more Darkest House products or similar, or will there be similar products from MCG?
I don't. Well, I mean, never say never. We don't have anything specifically for the Darkest House that is currently planned right now. I mean, more or less, if you've got the Devoured Halls and the Darkest House, you've got more or less the whole house. I mean, the house keeps growing, so that's why I never say never. But that format, we spent a lot of time and put a lot of energy into that, and so I would love to see that kind of presentation again. Something that's designed specifically for online gaming, and it presents all the information in hopefully an easy to use format with have the map and the art and all that stuff right there, and it's easy to show your players and post it somewhere or whatever. I just got done running a long Darkest House game for specifically for a bunch of people who don't work at MCG, because everyone at MCG knew all the stuff, and I wanted to play it fresh again, and had a great time. And this was the first time, like, I ran Darkest House, but it was before all the app and everything was all created, so I was just like shuffling papers around and looking at files on my screen, and now actually getting to use the product as it's meant to be used, I'm even happier with it than I was before. So I would love to see us, because you could do anything, right? You could do a traditional dungeon, a big mega dungeon or something, just like that. You could do a location source book style product, right?
Monty, I made the suggestion when I first saw Darkest House, the first time we got to play in it, the first time I got the demo, it was like, you know what, you guys, if you wanted to do it, man, just do one adventure a year, do one for Numenera, then do one for one of the Splat books, do one for Save, Stars or Fire. Those would be great. And I know myself personally, I'd buy them because you could build on them. And I'm quite sure everybody out there will buy an adventure like that, built for those type things, because it's a brilliant product. I've just had fun with it with my wife here, playing with it, putting it on the 75-inch TV in the living room, and just like showing her the rooms and using the ambient music and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm like, that's creepy. So because I would have run a Halloween game if it hadn't been for the pandemic. I would have, definitely did that, and you got the surround sound and stuff. It's such a great product. It's so innovative. It really brings things together. So quite happy with it.
I just want to ask a quick question. Is the process any easier now that you have like the shell to convert, like say another adventure in the same format?
In that we know like how to do it all, yes. I don't know if there's a matter of back-end architecture, but that we can reuse, but maybe there is. But even if there isn't, that was actually easy to do and didn't take very long. The problem was figuring out what we needed and what we wanted it to look like at the end, and what, how we wanted to present it, and how it would be organized. It would be a lot easier, I think, because it would be really easy to just plug in a completely different setting or place or location, and it wouldn't look anything like it does for Darkest House, and it wouldn't have to, but it would still sort of be the same process.
All right, this is our last question from the audience, and I'm sorry if you guys asked any questions. It's just that we have some rapid fire questions, and we don't want to keep Monte here all day, even though we would love to. He's a very busy
I'll come back. I'll be back.
He already told you that he has to read like 8 different products as soon as he gets off here. Gonza PAEST asked, out of curiosity, what is the ratio of Cypher Tollus to 5e Tollus in order requests? I'm not sure. This might be more of a Charles question, but do you expect the same ratio for Planebreaker?
I don't know the specifics of that. I understand what you're asking, though. We printed and sold more 5e Toluses than Cypher Toluses, and and that it's what we expected, and partially because 5e is just super popular and it's got a much larger audience, but also with Tolus, Tolus started out as a Dungeons and Dragons adventure or setting, and so it makes sense that people would want to keep it there if that's the way that they enjoyed it the first time. I expect that to be true of Planebreaker as well. The difference might not be quite as high, but we have a pretty good. And again, I'm sorry, I'm not being vague because I'm being secretive. I'm being vague because I don't know the actual numbers, but we have a pretty good handle. Charles particularly has a pretty good handle on, if there's X many 5e backers, then there's going to be X many Cypher, right?
Yeah, I figured that would be a Charles question. He's usually good for those.
Yeah.
And
okay, Dean.
I was just going to say, we're not going to necessarily ask any more questions. We're just going to throw out there what a few people said. They were just saying that, things just to put out there for you, Monte, if it would help. They like to see more toolkit type products, settings and adventures, online tools. People were talking about VTT supports and stuff like that. So stuff that you've heard before, but, people were just looking at those type things because, and me too, I agree. Those things are absolutely, totally and utterly the best parts of being a storyteller, game master, however you want to put it. When you give us fodder, I think that's why Numenera is so brilliant, because it's so much stuff, but it's still wide open.
Yeah. So. Cool. All right.
Oh, but here's the part where we dig deep into your soul, Monte. You've done this twice already before. We pull out your essence, we stretch it on the table for the whole world to see the famous CU rapid fire questions. These are
you guys have dug so deep into my soul, my soul's empty now.
we're digging deep with game-related questions. I'll ask the first question. Chess or checkers?
Chess.
Monopoly or Risk?
Oh, Risk. You could pretty much say a kick in the face or Monopoly. I'd probably say kick in the face.
What is the least used die in your dice bag?
Ooh. Well, I'm the GM most of the time, and my games, the GM doesn't roll, so that would be almost all of them. But probably the D12. Here's a funny anecdote. I'm going to waste some of your time. When we were designing third edition, we accidentally designed the D12 out of the game. There was a version of the game, and we like looked at it, and somebody said, there's no D12s in here, and so we had to go back in and like, okay, so Great Axe, that's going to be a D12, and
I was gonna say that's a barbarian thing, right?
That's actually
usually
hilarious.
when I think of D12s, it's either a barbarian or maybe a paladin. Like those are like the two that get to use the D12 the most.
Yeah.
Here's a good one: a good movie or a good video game.
Oh, that's a hard one because it's probably like it probably depends on how much time I have. But if you're talking like 2 hours of both, I'll go with the movie. But if I've got more time, probably go with the video game.
Gotcha.
Nice.
GM screen or playmat?
I'm a playmat more kind of guy.
Oh, you heard it here. In your face, GM screen, guys.
So, what is the first non-fantasy RPG you ever played?
That's a really good question. It's either Travelers or Villains of Vigilantes. And I honestly cannot remember which one of those I played first.
Well, actually, I think it would probably have to be V&V, but actually it would be the game you created first because you couldn't wait for V&V to get there, right?
Well, there's that, but I wasn't counting stuff that I made up on my own.
What is the first thing you read when you pick up a new game?
Oh, I will flip through I'll flip through character creation very, very briefly to just kind of get even just the vaguest idea of what it looks like. And then I'll probably look at the GM section and where they're talking about how to run the game. Like the actual mechanics are much later.
That's a great
Makes
answer.
sense.
Yeah.
Favorite setting to be a player in?
I'm GM 99.9% of the time, and probably most of my settings that I've played in that I've really enjoyed have been homebrew. But I'm going to go with the Ninth World. I'm going to say Numenera. I haven't got to play it as much as I wish that I did, but when I have, I've really enjoyed it.
Last but not least, favorite setting to GM?
Oh, that would be Invisible Sun.
Okay.
Good answers. Ooh.
This question isn't a rapid fire question, but I'm gonna throw it in there anyway. Are we gonna get an ampersand appearance?
Are we gonna get a what? Oh, did you? I don't know if my mic could pick up her nails clicking on the wood floor here. She's right here next to me.
Oh.
Shauna was saying on Twitter that we might get blessed with an ampersand appearance. So
yeah, come here.
You got a quick little doggo. Oh, there she is. Oh, baby.
She's so black you can't even really see her.
Wait. It kind of looks like my dog who's sitting right here. Where's my dog? No, my camera's in a bad spot. She's right there, that black spot.
Yeah.
all I see is Magic the Gathering cards.
Hey, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, it's a problem.
So, once again, Monte, as always, thank you for coming on the show. Definitely come back. You always say you don't get to, be a player as much. We'd love to have you on the show and run some games for you.
I'm in. Sounds great.
I mean, even though we would love for you to run us in something too at some point, but you're definitely more than welcome. We'll set something up, get you on here, and for that. Everybody out there in the interwebs world, thanks for coming to the show tonight. And you got anything you want to say to the world out there?
Just I'm saying the chat is, Monte, the chat is, preaching the undying love for you and all MCG, all everything you guys do. And I just want to reiterate that. Thank you, Monte, for coming on. We always appreciate not only what you do for us, but the entire MCG team. We love you guys and we love all the products you guys do. Not only are you great individuals, you produce great products, and that's why we're, lifelong fans of the company. Al, before I get into my spiel, would you like to say anything?
No, just thank you so much, Monty, and thank you everybody for stopping by. And I'll have my quick little goodbye after Anthony does his thing.
If you like us and you like what we do, visit the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. We have the largest fan-run Discord server for all things Monte Cook Games. We have almost 4,000 members there, playing games daily, talking about not only every game MCG makes, but all the wonderful settings. If you haven't played Numenera but want to give it a try, join that Discord server. We'll get you in the game, I promise. Or if Discord is not for you, join our Facebook group. It's not as big as our Discord, but there's still conversations being had there daily. Right? If you want to support us in small ways, give us a little donation on Ko-fi. Our videos are always free, but it helps us out with little things like Zoom calls. Or go to the Cypher Unlimited store and pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch like you see here. Be the coolest kid on the block. And yes, we're working on capes. Am I missing anything?
No,
I think you covered them all.
Last but not least, we love you guys.
I feel like you're writing.
Definitely, when the capes come out, Monty, yours is going to be, hot off the press right next to mine.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you keep mentioning the capes.
And James Walls suggested, Jennifer's husband suggested that we come up with a CU cape. So now we're working on it.
It's the alternative to the GM screen or playmat. You have the GM.
There
cape.
you go.
You're gonna have
all your
information.
notes right here.
And we want to get it branded with Stay Alive. So when you do vampire scenes, you could just fake it.
No, I'm not even kidding. I would use that. Right.
Now we actually have to do it. And they said it enough. Now we got Monty who wants. Now we have to actually make this a thing. We gotta look into some options here. But either way, that's another talk for another time. But yeah, thanks again so much, Monty, for coming on, talking with us. Thank you everybody out there for stopping by watching. It'll be up on YouTube for tomorrow if you missed the beginning of it. Yeah, all the relevant links will be down below. And if you haven't checked out the Kickstarter for Path of Planebreaker, be sure to do so. It's about 21 hours left remaining. And yeah, definitely back it. It seems like a very awesome product. That should be it. Thank you again so much. And yeah, from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, guys.